Welcome to Breaking the Narrative, a Stand With Us Canada podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Primorano, and in each episode, we'll dive into the fight against anti-Semitism and the delegitimization of Israel. From student leaders to community advocates, we'll explore how people are standing up and making a difference. New episodes drop every other Thursday, so let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Narrative. I'm your host, Jesse Primorano, and thrilled to be joined today by Dahlia Kurtz. Dahlia is an investigative journalist, an influencer, and what I like to call a Jewish superhero, somebody who's not afraid to stand up to those trying to tear her down, to protect her Jewish identity and all of ours as well. Dahlia built a career as a nationally syndicated talk show host, a writer, and a social impact leader, but since October 7th has put all of that on hold to protect all of us, Jews across Toronto, Canada, the world at large, and make sure that our identity is protected in spaces where it's being torn down each and every day. Dahlia, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for making my mom a part of the show and allowing her to write that intro.
Well, you know what? We want to make sure we know how it is in the Jewish community. We like to cavil and we like to praise, but at the end of the day, we're living this moment right now where there aren't so many people, doing what needs to be done to the extent that it has to be done. And that's not a shot or a condemnation of anyone. It's just to say that we're living in a terrifying time to be proud to be Jewish. And so when there's somebody like you who is unbelievably relentless in your Jewish pride and in your strength, we like to praise, we like to write Jewish mother-sounding intros.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to have the honor of being here so that we can continue to control the media. Thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to have you. So, Dahlia, you've built a career. We talked about already, like in the media. I'd love to talk a little bit about your background in media, and most importantly, what has led you to lead with your Jewish identity through your career and now this new sort of phase of your life.
It's funny how you say I built a career because I feel more like I've crumbled it. I have absolutely destroyed my career. I've sacrificed my safety, I've sacrificed my finances, and I've lost everything that I worked so very hard to build after October 7th. And I'm not saying that for any sympathy whatsoever, because I don't want it and I don't need it. I'm saying that because I want people to understand how very important this is to me. And, you had mentioned earlier something about what my mother wrote, coming forward strong with my Jewish identity. It's not about me at all. Everything that I do is about helping to give people light and to fight for Jews, but also fight for Western civilization. Mm-hmm. And before October 7th, I was a writer, talk show host, radio talk show host, investigative journalist, speaker. And then October 6th, my mom and I, she was visiting from out of town, and we were watching, of all movies, we were watching Golda, the story of the Yom Kippur War and how Israel overcame all odds to win. The next morning, we're having our coffee and we're having a conversation talking about that and how did Israel do it? How did they do it? And then we're interrupted on our phones. Ding, 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 ding. And messages are flooding in from friends and family with what's happening in Israel. And as soon as I read the first one, I knew. Mm-hmm. That's it. And I decided at that moment that I will do everything I can to fight for Jews, to fight for Israel, to fight for Western civilization. I put up a photo online that night, and I'm sending love to a country that has just been massacred. And by October 9th, I had lost a big radio contract. I lost a big podcast contract. My speaking agent ghosted me, and I lost all of my speaking gigs. And I lost all of my friends, but one. And that didn't stop me. It just motivated me. And from October 7th on, I've been investigating and exposing bad actors. I've been helping people who aren't getting the help that they need. So I've been doing this fight, but at the same time, I have been bringing light, which is part of my own mission, fight and light. So I like to give people the light so that they could find their strength, whether it's Jews or non-Jews, so that they could find their strength within to fight as well. And whether that light comes from my book, Dear Zionists, You're Not Alone, 18 Letters of Hope and Light, or if it comes from, I remember there was a time, everything seems like one day since October 7th, so I can't pinpoint it at this particular moment, but I was getting all of these messages from people in the Toronto area talking about how they were removing their mezuzot from their doors. And it's because these women in hijabs were going around noting something on clipboards and taking pictures of the homes. So somebody sends me a picture of where their mezuzah used to live, and I put that up on X, Twitter, and I explained what's going on, and I asked people to put a mezuzah on their door in solidarity. Whether or not you're Jewish, put a mezuzah on your door. And that went viral around the world, and people from all over the world, non-Jews, were sending images of the new mezuzah that they put up on their door.
Wow.
And to me, that's better protection than you can get from police. I know it's better protection than you can get from police.
Firsthand, unfortunately.
Firsthand, I can say this, yes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate to say, but we can't rely on institutions anymore,
No.
of any kind. The only hope I think we have is public support, right? That we need to know that more of our neighbors are on our side and going to protect us than those that won't. It was beautiful what we saw the other day. I want to say it was in Germany, but I think that might be slightly
Munich?
off. In Munich, was it in Munich,
Yep.
where they built the human chain around the shul?
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that it's come to that, but it's the unfortunate reality that, like you said, just simply speaking up for Israel will lose you your jobs, your contracts, your friends. But all of a sudden now we know the truth behind that is it's not about standing up for Israel. It's about being Jewish, or it's about standing up for Jewish people.
It's about standing up.
Yeah, and we
yeah.
talked, just a quick sidetrack. I mean, like Hulk Hogan passed away. It'll be a few weeks ago by the time this episode gets up. And this guy, I think one time in his life, after October 7th, just once, he said, sending my prayers to the people of Israel after this, horrific massacre at the hands of terrorists. And now he's dead. This is, however many months later. And the only thing you're seeing online is we're not upset about Hulk Hogan's death. In fact, it's great. He's gone. He's a Zionist scum. Zionist scum. This guy once expressed sympathy for. So anyhow, we don't need to go off on this tangent, but just to say that.
No, but it's a strong statement.
Right, but imagine being in your position. You are a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
You are vocal and outspoken regularly. That's the kind of the dichotomy that we're facing as a Jewish community. Is we're forced to decide: do we keep to ourselves and do we just fall in line, or in worse scenarios, do we join the IJV, Independent Jewish Voices, and the Jewish Voice for Peace, or do we speak up and lose everything we have? So I guess before we go in, to the future, I'd like to just go back to your past a little bit. Through history, Jewish leaders have always faced this, right? It's the Jewish community. They're going to save them at the expense of their own, safety, security, reputation, whatever it is. You fit that bill, right? As somebody who said, I'm going to do whatever it takes and give my all to this community. Where does that spirit come from in you? Is there anything in particular that drives that?
I come from a family of fighters, and I will get to that in one moment, but you said something that I also want to make sure to touch upon just when we were talking about police and security. And I think it's important to note that at the beginning, because I've had to file a lot of reports with police, and at the beginning they had told me that the reason why I'm getting all of these threats, which I won't get specific about, is because I make myself a target. Mm-hmm. And you talk about, how I'm a fighter and I'm outspoken, and I don't even see myself as being outspoken. I see myself as speaking what needs to be said. And for police to tell me that I make myself a target, do they say that to victims of rape as well? And And that is just the beginning of the problems I see with police. I mean, we just got a report about how hate crimes against Jewish people are the highest in Canada. That report, statistically, doesn't nearly cover it, because you have the numbers of people who report the hate incidents. Mm-hmm. You have the numbers of people who refuse to report it because they think, what's the point? But then there's another section, another criteria that people don't realize exist. The number of crimes against Jews that are considered hate. And I have filed hate crimes against me, which are clear hate crimes. And police don't view them as hate crimes. Mm-hmm. They will file it as harassment or something other than hate. So the number of hate crimes in this country against Jewish people are probably so astronomical that whatever high number we're at right now, which I wouldn't even bother to acknowledge because it's like a fairy tale, it just blows it out of the water.
Wow. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that people understand that, because I know you invite me on to talk about me, but I just feel like there's so many things that we need to get to. But this is about not me. I told you I come from a family of fighters. And so I have my grandparents who were Holocaust survivors. I have my older brother who's done extraordinary things to protect the Jews. And I also, my father. And as soon as I say my father, people say, oh, I'm so sorry, may his memory be a blessing. His memory is alive with us right now. He has gone nowhere, and he's going to be here until 120. I have no doubt about it. The man is a fighter. Before I was born, my father did something that changed history. He fought a 10-year court case because he went for a job in Montreal and they wouldn't hire him. He was the star candidate, but when they got to the last question, they asked, "Are you Jewish?" He answered it correctly, but it was the wrong answer. So he became the Star of David candidate, and they said, "We don't hire Jews." So he took them to court. The lawyer on the other side was future Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Brian Mulroney. My father's lawyer was provincially appointed, so he never showed up. But I have to say, to be fair to Brian, may his memory be a blessing, that he was compassionate to my father, and he didn't stay on that case long. But that case went on for more than a decade. This is threats, death threats, blacklisted, blackballed, and finally it comes down to the judge's verdict. And remember, my dad fought this case because he didn't want his kids to grow up on the streets of Montreal being beaten up like he was as a child. He didn't want his children to be denied opportunities simply for being Jewish. And the judge delivers his verdict and he says, despite confessions of Jew hate, I have to award the case to the defense because there were no laws to prohibit it. So my dad lost, but millions and millions of Canadians won because his case went on to be the catalyst to change the Quebec Civil Code to add protections against discrimination, which then went on to add protections against discrimination in Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But fast forward years later, my brother and I are born, and my dad still can't find work, trying to get by with whatever menial jobs he can. And my family is hated. My older brother is beaten up on the streets of Montreal. I'm 4 years old, and I'm called a maudite juive, a dirty Jew. I hide food under my bed because I don't know if my parents are going to be able to afford food for us the next day. I also clearly didn't know the laws of science and bacteria. But I say this because I want people to understand that the fault lines of Jew hate have always existed in Canada and around the world. And what we experienced on October 7th, it's just an earthquake.
Wow. It's a beautiful story. First of all, I mean, it's I say beautiful in a strange way, I guess, because it's obviously a story of, you know, difficulty and tragedy and hardship, but it's been the Jewish story for 3,000 years, right? Is that there are moments where we have to make a decision of whether we, you know, take off our Magen David, take down our mezuzot, and just fit in for the sake of fitting in, or if we understand that we come from a long history of tradition and religion and spirit that we need to preserve, and most importantly, that people don't care at the end of the day whether we practice our Judaism or not. If we just hide it, eventually they'll come. Like, if we suppress ourselves and refuse to be a strong and proud community, at the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing as it was in Spain and the same thing as it was in Europe in the 40s. You know, like, it doesn't matter if you're a practicing Jew or not. If your family is Jewish, you're Jewish, and you don't belong in our society.
No, you could be one of these suicidal Jews. I know a lot of people call them self-hating Jews, but they're suicidal.
Well, they don't like to be called self-hating Jews. They get really upset about that. So maybe we should start calling them suicidal Jews instead.
Suicidal Jews.
They went after Cuomo this week for calling them self-hating Jews, and again, like, it's the same concept of, you know, people like your father that could not find work, could not take care of their kids to the extent, like you're saying, you're hiding food, kid is getting beat up in the street. Meanwhile, these guys are willing to abandon their identity altogether. But let's not get too far.
I do want to, may I add something
Please.
to that? Because you said
Yes.
who are not able to take care of their kids. And I know
Sorry,
you meant
yes.
you meant no offense, but there's something very important that I'd like to note with this, and I think that a lot of parents need to understand. So, and my parents need to understand this too. My parents have always thought, and I know that this is one of their sadnesses, is that they never gave me and my brothers everything that we deserved. They never gave us the money we needed.
They gave you so much more, though.
They did. They gave us fight and light, and that is everything every child deserves and every child needs, and Jewish or not.
And identity, again, Jewish or not, they gave you something to be proud of, something to believe in, and something to aspire towards. Like, you look at your parents and you aspire to be like them, which in many cases, you know, may not be the case. And that's the most beautiful thing, is what they've built in you. And look what you've become. So let's talk about that. Your father was a fighter, your brother was a fighter, you're now a fighter. What does that fight look like for you? Like, when we talk about since October 7th, people are familiar with you, your presence online, but I guess maybe I would love to sort of talk through, like, your thinking, like, when you are going about your day-to-day, what are you trying to achieve? What are you looking for? What does that fight look like for you?
I don't even know, because every day my fight is sidetracked by a new fight. I can make a list of things I need to do, certain people I need to investigate, and certain cases that I'm working on, and I'm writing a second book right now. There's a lot that I need to do. And every day, whatever list I make is overridden by a new tragedy, somebody else who needs help, something else that has surfaced. And so my day, just since October 7th, and I don't want to make this again about me, because I've been to Israel a couple of times since October 7th, and it's still October 7th there. And the people of Israel have been remarkable. I've been to Israel many times in my life, so prior to October 7th, and then, you know, it's where I got my Mossad training. Prior to October 7th, and after October 7th, and I have never, ever seen a country come together with so much solidarity and strength as I've seen in Israel. To me, to see that, to see all people from all faiths, to see the beaches cleaner than I've ever seen them, that says to me so much about the people. And that also tells me that I've gone way off track from the question you asked me. Can you rein me back in, please? So
we were talking about like what your actual fight has looked like, I guess, since October 7th.
So yeah,
again, I guess it's hard because you said there's always a new fight.
It's not always a fight, though. You see, that's the thing. So even though I'm in this constant fight since October 7th, and it's been one long day, which I think is what I was alluding to, there's been so much light. You know, I sat in Jaffa with an Arab Israeli man in his restaurant while we heard the call to prayer right next to us at a mosque, and we heard the call to prayer. And he invited me to come in and sit with him. I don't know this man, a stranger. And there are Israeli flags hung around his entire restaurant, and they're blowing in the wind. He invites me to have lunch. We're sitting eating an amazing meal because Israel. And we are under the threat of attack from Iran at that time. And we're just smiling and we're laughing. And to find a sense of peace like that during actual war, what a gift. What a gift. I have been able to have a very privileged life despite whatever losses I have had. Since October 7th, I've been able to be let into people who need help. I've been able to go to the Bibas home a couple of times. I have Kfir and Ariel's toys at my feet. I had the opportunity to bear witness to the aftermath of October 7th, to bear witness to the aftermath of Nova, to have people share their very personal, traumatic stories with me. I always wished that my grandparents would have lived longer so I could learn more about their Holocaust experiences. They died when I was really young. And getting to learn all about October 7th and to be able to contribute my voice to helping those affected by it is like that gift that I was waiting for from my grandparents. And so as hard as it's been, and I don't say this to minimize October 7th in any way, I say it to cherish it as a very sacred day that we always have to remember. I am so grateful that I have been in this. No matter what I've lost, it's been more than worth it. And it's a fulfilling and meaningful experience to be part of the Voices Helping.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is, what it means to be a Jewish leader. Like we just talked about earlier, like historically, there are these moments in time where people need to step up. And I think that looks so different. There's so many different ways to do that for people to take on these important roles. Like you just listed so many things that you're doing. And some of them are, big picture, like reaching the masses, pushing back. And some are small, like you said, just to be a voice of support to somebody who needs it. And I think that's what being Jewish is all about, is sort of saying, in an ideal world, we would all be a little bit better at saying, well, what can I do for the community?
People ask me this all of the time.
Right. It's not about like, well, here's what I think I want to do or what I should do. It's what does the community need from me or from my organization or from my family? Like it's just about trying to find a way to contribute. And I feel like that might be a bit of where I've talked about that openly on this podcast, and we don't need to get into it now, is just to say that there's a little bit of that disconnect, because I think we have a beautifully intelligent, driven community that is very focused on solutions and creating solutions. But what I admire most about you is that it hasn't necessarily been about a solution as much as it's about just trying to be where you're needed, when you're needed, and how you're needed. And I really have always admired that as I've followed you online, and I've seen you speak a couple of times at rallies. And I think that's the most important thing to remember, is that, we're not going to find a solution. Anti-Semitism is 3,000 years old, and, we're not fixing it, at least not today, but we need to continue to fight. And, you and I have spoken about that before.
Yeah, we had that conversation. People ask me, what do I want out of this battle? What's my goal out of this battle? Like, what win do you want? And none of it is about the win. It's about the fight.
Yeah.
And to show people that you must always fight. It has nothing to do with what the outcome is. It has to do with the fight itself.
Right.
And people ask me all the time, like what you just said, what should I do? I don't know how to contribute. I think people are looking for meaning, right? It's the meaning of life is to live a meaningful life. And how do you do that? It's how you define yourself. Mm-hmm. How do you define yourself? Do you define yourself as a Jew? Do you define yourself as a fighter? And I think that you should look at a bit more of an esoteric way. How do I define myself? I define myself by the sacrifices I make for the truth. Mm-hmm. And if you start looking at what your contribution is it the sacrifices that you're making for the truth? You'll learn what those sacrifices are, you'll learn what the truth is, and you'll learn how to fight harder for it.
Yeah. And I think that's the most critical thing right now is, I guess understanding the depths to which they are going to erase our history and our narrative, mm-hmm. both past and present, right? What's happening today is one thing, but now, this again will be a few weeks old by the time this airs, but there was the podcast yesterday where they were, we talked about victim blaming earlier. They were saying, well, I mean, Hitler must have killed the Jews for a reason. Like, they
yes.
must have been doing something wrong. And, well, look what's happening now. And then somebody said, well, what would you do about it? And someone says, kill them all. And I wish I could see which one of them said it because they weren't on camera at the time. But this is the reality of the situation that we're dealing with, right? And
the reality is that's a microcosm
right.
of the situation that we're dealing with. That's not an anomaly where you see this. It's everywhere. And I can tell you, based upon the messages that I receive, and I can't even count them. I can't count them. And people tell me not to read them, but I have to read them because it's evidence. And it's important to document history, and it's important to keep all of this. And the things that I have read have been utterly vile, and I don't think most people would believe them. So when I see that podcast of people praising Hitler, I mean, when I had my radio talk show, somebody called in to praise Hitler. And this was my first talk show, actually. And I always let people speak, even when they say stuff that is beyond. But when you're praising a genocider, you're not going to do it on my watch. And I was always, I think I was always known as, my show was about helping to make good things happen for people. And so people always saw me as sweet, and I have curly hair, and so I must be absolutely adorable, which I am. I'm like an adorable. And
no argument here.
I wouldn't allow that on my show, and I shut it down. 2 weeks later, I was no longer at the station, but I wasn't at the station because I was fired. That happened to be the day that I resigned from the job. Oh. But everybody thought that was the reason.
I did, as you were telling the story. That's how you're a good storyteller, because you know how to...
Thank you. But I will tell you that when I was in media, government-subsidized media, people call it legacy media, mainstream. I call it government-subsidized because let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
So when I was in government-subsidized media, I gave myself like a point system, and I was only allowed to accrue a certain amount of points. And every time I got a point, it was for when I said something Jewish, whether it was about me or about Israel or anything that reveals my Jewish identity. People knew I was Jewish because I made sure the people knew I was Jewish, but I was also told that I was being too Jewish. And I had to tame it down. And there was a lot of this that I dealt with. Meanwhile, everybody could be everything and anything that they want.
Well, look at the rest of every other minority on the planet right now for the last 10 years has been the loudest voice on
And
earth.
I've been fighting for all of them. I fought for people with disabilities. I fought for LGBTQ. I fought for everybody. And all of the very people that I risked my career fighting for. I risked my career fighting for them. Those are the very people who lashed out after at me. And it says a lot about where we are, but I also really, 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 really want to make it clear. This is not just about Jewish people. Israel is the jugular of democracy. I think everybody should know this by now, that, you stab Israel and the whole West bleeds. But I want to make it really clear that I do not just fight for Jewish people. The big fight here, we're just first in line. The big fight here is Western civilization.
Yeah.
It's Operation Destroy Western Civilization.
And we talk about that all the time at Stand With Us Canada, like in our materials, in our communications. At the end of the day, this is the first step for them. It's to the destabilization that we've seen across North America. There had to be something to destabilize the West. This was the issue that not only achieved the goal of, demonizing and dehumanizing the Jewish people, but furthermore, the goal of disrupting Western democracy. And it's not really that's the part that has always made me craziest, is that like it isn't really that hard to see. Okay, so Iran is funding all these proxies to attack Israel. Israel is America's biggest ally in the East. Like Iran obviously does not fall under
it's hard to see for this reason. If you look at somebody who, let's say, I'm just going to give an example, somebody who doesn't think that they're very worthwhile in life, and they're sad and they're depressed. They're not going to look for anything, the people who say good things to them. They want to find things that agree with their worldview. If their worldview is that they suck, the world hates them, and life sucks, they're only going to notice things in life that validate their thought patterns.
Or, like similar to the propaganda in World War II, they will only look to things in life that say, "Oh, I can make you feel better about yourself."
Then that's the other side of the coin. But so we have all of these people who feel, what I'm saying with this is that this dislike towards Jews, for instance, it's so deep rooted. It's so, my best friends grew up not liking Jews because they didn't know why. It was just because that's how they were taught.
It's the Jews.
And so it's so deep rooted. And then the other side of it is, I remember when I was hosting my show, and I had on one of the heads of YouTube. And this is going to speak to what you were just saying, how we're going to save you. So I had on one of the heads of YouTube, and I said to him, "What makes a viral video? Why does it go viral?" And he said, "The key thing is that people want to feel part of something bigger than they are." And that is what Palestinianism is, this movement. It makes them feel part of something bigger than they are. Yesterday, I was looking at video after video after video on my TikTok, because once you fall into an algorithm, you're down the black hole. And video after video were women crying. "I can't believe what I'm seeing in Gaza. I can't believe the starvation." Crying to a camera. Because one, they're part of something bigger than they are. Two, they're getting validated for feeling miserable. And that's what part of their worldview.
Wow, yeah, that's actually interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective, that like that's validation for their misery.
It's validation.
But also, like, and the other side of this that we have to remember too is that like this is all, like, in many cases it's also grifting, right? Like there's also all these folks who are like this Guy Christensen. I will It's like my biggest arch nemesis who doesn't even know that I exist, but I cannot stand this guy.
Yes,
and you look at what he's doing and I'm like, all right, you're raising like all this money. Where's it going? Have you once provided a receipt for anything, that donation clip of anything that you've done with it? Like, no. This money's going, at least some of it, into his pocket. His views, his crocodile tears online, all of this stuff is extremely... You could tell it's forced. You watch him; he's acting on camera,
a lot of acting.
And it's all the same. Anyways, look, we're on this topic, and I want to pivot a little bit because I want to explore, your insight and expertise as somebody who's been a part of, the media for years. You said, and we've talked about it in the last few minutes about how October 7th is still going on, right? That's how magnanimous the impact of that day was on our community. It will never leave us. But you've also said, and I might slightly misquote this, so correct me if I do, but you've said that you were more surprised by the reaction to October 7th than by October 7th itself, which I guess doesn't mean that one is worse than the other. October 7th is predictable because you have Hamas wanting to kill the Jews on the other side of the border. But what was it about the reaction that surprised? I mean, look, we're all so shocked by how emboldened anti-Semitism has become, but I mean more from the sense of the media, right? We've watched the media manipulate things. We've watched them parrot statistics from Hamas back to the public as if they're, reputable figures. We've seen CBC outright tell their reporters not to refer to Hamas as terrorists, but rather freedom fighters.
They told me when I was working for every major news organization, I could never say terrorist. I had to say, at that time, prior to October 7th, it was extremists, that militants, never terrorists. Of course I said terrorists, because I say it as it is.
So I had Wendy Sachs on here, and I told her that I thought, Wendy Sachs is the director of October 8, and I told her that I thought the media was rotten to the core. And she said that I don't believe anything is rotten to the core. I think that things are fixable. And then the next night, I went to her opening of her documentary, and she said that the media was rotten to the core. So I was like, all right, I guess she had time to think about it, and I'm glad that she agrees.
You're an influencer.
Yeah, hey, Jesse. What can I say? But in all seriousness, can you talk a bit about, why do you think that exists? Why do you think the media is so biased against Israel? And, is there anything that you've identified that someone like you or the community at large can or should be doing to push back against this media bias?
I don't think that the media is only biased against Israel. I think the media, if we're speaking to Canadians, the media is biased against Canadians. The media is biased against Western values. Our government is biased against Western values. The media, most of it is the big ones that we hear about. They are government subsidized. So your tax dollars paying for this, and I see them far less as media, and I see them much more as a PR machine. I'll give you an example. So when I had my show, one of my shows, I worked really, really hard to get extraordinary guests. I mean, I would have Nobel Prize winners. I'd have really remarkable people. And my 3 bosses sat me down one day, and they said that I have to, this is their words, not mine, I have to stop making my show so good. And I was like positive? Or I don't know what you mean by that. No, don't make it as good. They
want bad stuff.
But I've got some really guests, really great guests lined up, and I don't want to cancel what's coming right now. And they said, great idea. There's a heat wave coming. Their idea was, I cancel my great guests that I had, and every hour on my show, this is a 4-hour show, call the bakery around the corner from the station, ask them what the temperature in their kitchen is. I tried not to clap really loud because I knew I'd scare people. But ask them what the temperature is in the bakery. This is media. This is a news station. This is a news network.
It sounds like it's run by Ron Burgundy.
I had great stuff lined up, or good, as they said. But they wanted me instead, during a summer heat wave, to call a bakery and ask the temperature in their kitchen. And I'll explain even further why this is important. They do not look, on the flip side, we're not talking about government subsidies, we're talking about media's there to make money. They are not looking to deliver the best news. They are not looking to deliver the most newsworthy news. Their bottom line is money. And as I was told, you'll see a bunch of horrible shows on TV. I mean, I don't really even have patience for TV anymore. I live with a TikTok brain now. Yeah. But you'll see the most horrible shows on TV. And you're like, how does this get made?
Yeah, I always wondered how Corner Gas was...
I don't even know how that goes. But I'll tell you how it gets made. Because you make a whole lot more money in mediocrity than you do with the best. There's a greater return on investment for anything mediocre, because you're not paying for the best, you're not paying to put out the best, so your investment isn't very high.
Well, yeah, you're kind of always presuming that your viewership will remain sort of the same, so you may as well invest less in it. And I actually will take that a step further and say that they probably don't want, if you have all the best guests right from the start, then it's only downhill from there. So they're probably always trying to keep it on.
Well, no. So the other side to that, there's 2 other things. You were sort of leading me somewhere, and I hope I don't forget these thoughts. But one is on this last one that you said about my show will go downhill. No, it won't.
Okay, not your show, but I'm saying I'm
like a little bit of a spicy.
A little bit
of a spicy falafel.
I like falafel. Yes. Not spicy though.
I love everything spicy. But what happened is it means other people have to raise their game. And they're playing the mediocrity game. And they don't want to put that pressure on the other hosts. And I'm not saying this because I'm special. I'm not. I just worked hard.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just a matter of working hard to go beyond mediocrity.
But I guess...
sorry, just before I forget.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other side of this is where you mentioned they expect an audience to be a certain way. Exactly. Every time I started at a new station or I started a new column, I had to train my audience.
Right.
Because they have certain expectations and certain things that they're used to. And suddenly I was forcing people to think. How dare I? I never told people. I don't like telling people what to believe. I like putting something in front of people's face, showing them the other side of the story, and letting them discern, helping people develop critical thinking. And it's very, very difficult to train people who are asleep.
Right.
And I did my best to wake people up. And they would much rather everybody stay asleep.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess that's a big part of it too. And I think going back to what you were talking about before, if everything at the end of the day is about the bottom line, then it's exactly the same as
It's the bottom line.
It's the same as it's going to be in politics, where you're going to appeal to the demographics that have more to offer you financially, right? And as Jews that make up less than 2% of the population, that sounds way too high. 0.2% of the population. We have no value to them. Defending Israel in the media has no value to their bottom line because 99.8% of the population is going to turn against them. And I think that you really identified, you're telling the story about this like bakery thing and the temperature in the kitchen, and I was like, okay, this is an interesting story, but I wasn't sure where it was going to go in terms of the parallel to this. And it shows you really that I guess basically the bottom line is that there's no interest in media or in news in actually reporting the news.
No, and I'll tell you, let me take
it's an entertainment show. It's like a performance.
I'll take it a step further. So as a talk show host, I'm preparing my show in the newsroom, so I'm surrounded by everybody who works in news. So these are all of the reporters. And we would get, we're on the mailing list for, let's say, the government. We would get a press release from the government about something that's going on. And they know that media underpays. They know that people are overworked. And so what they do is they make it really easy on the reporters and the young reporters. And so when they give this press release, they already write it like a news story. They don't write it in the traditional press release style. And then the young reporter who's making, a low wage and just doesn't really care, is just finishing their day at work, copies and pastes exactly what the government or whatever agency just sent and reads it as news. How is that a news piece? It's not.
It's not.
But it's presented to you as news because this reporter doesn't want to do reporting, and they're not taught to do reporting.
Right.
They're taught to fill this slot, the top of the hour with, let's say, 5 stories and a kicker. A kicker is just like something fun or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
So it's performative. It's entirely performative.
It's just a formula.
And the crazy part is that, I grew up as a kid, not that I know my family watched wrestling, but you'd see wrestling, you're like, wow, look at these guys, like they're fighting, and these, why do they have their faces painted? What's going on? And then you go, oh, it was all fake. It was all like they're not even actually touching each other. And this feels to me almost like the reality of the situation with the news, that like the world turns on their channel, the TV, they watch the news, and they take this as fact and forget that ultimately it's a performance, right? It's like going to a play, and you're watching a script that's being read to you by people with very specific intentions. And that is something that is problematic. And I want to come back afterwards to sort of talk about, I'll give you some time to think about this, what can we do, what has to change, if anything can. But what I want to talk about now is, okay, so if people aren't getting their news from anywhere reputable, from a big media standpoint, they're getting it from TikTok, they're getting it from Instagram, they're getting it from Twitter. I don't know if this is too vague a question for you, but what's the biggest disconnect from reality that our society is experiencing right now as a result of these distorted narratives that they're seeing? What is it? Is it that they think Jews are is it the blood libels? Is it that they truly believe that Israel is committing a genocide? Is it that
that's a loaded question.
I know. What's the biggest disconnect? Here, maybe this will be more helpful. messaging. You and I have talked before about how like we just don't have, the messaging is not consistent on our side, and you know, so if you could set the messaging standard of where do we need to focus on, and I know that probably shifts and evolves, but just big picture, what would you focus on? What lines do we need to connect for people in the public right now that they're not drawing on their own?
You know, I would take that back even, I would take that a step back. And the problem is, as soon as we engage in this fight, this war, this PR war, whatever you want to call it, by engaging in it, we've already lost. Because we don't play according to their rules,
right, and
we'll never be able to. So as soon as we engage, we lost. And I want to give an example, and I hope this speaks a little bit to it, but the way we view the world is we have a more individualistic style of viewing the world in the West. We look at things as to, how does this affect me? How am I going to be able to improve my life, make my life better, give myself the best life I could possibly have? On the flip side, there is a lot of mental illness right now too, so there's a lot of people just disconnecting.
Right.
But we have that idea, you know, if we're speaking from a healthier mind, we have that idea of how people are working very hard with this sense of individualism. When I was in Israel, I was talking to hostage survivor Moran Stelayanai, and she was sharing a story of one of her captors. Now, when she was with her group of hostages, she was like, I guess you can say the protective one. She took care of them. She took a lot of brutality for this, and you know, no need to discuss the details of it, but she took a lot of brutality, but at the same time she was brilliant. She's a brilliant woman, and she was able to talk to her captor and sort of befriend him, the guy holding her hostage, I should say. So she said that one day she was going through a meditation exercise with him to help him relax. He was really tense. And she was trying to tell him to imagine a beach and imagine a paradise, and he couldn't imagine that because he never had this idea, this individualistic idea of moving ahead, finding something good, you know, doing something good for himself. He was part of this bigger idea of death, chaos, destruction.
Right.
In the end, I die, I'm a martyr. And so we are fighting this fight against a team that, while there are differences in factions and there's fighting within and things are breaking up, and you know, a lot of times you'll see this cheering of people in Gaza and people say, oh, they're going against Hamas. It's another terror group that's trying to overtake Hamas. But while we see, you know, the other side, they do have a common goal: death, chaos, destruction, martyrdom. And our side has a goal of individualistically doing well. It's very hard to get a group of people, and this is Western values as well, who have been trained to do everything you can to succeed in life, to do what's good for you, to come together and unite around one idea like the other side does. And so when we're trying to fight the messaging of this fight and have one clear message, and I think, what's the expression, have talk to two Jews, get three opinions? Actually,
it's funny. Okay, yes, that's the expression, but yes.
So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. So the same thing, the same virtues that we're given are the same curses that hurt us.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. I guess what you're saying basically is that, you know, if there was, you know, some messaging that we could change, it would have sort of two effects. The first would be for the Jewish community to remind ourselves that we need to be more united, more focused on communal growth rather than individual.
And I would say communal growth with our allies. I was at a prominently Jewish event, and in the end, I take questions. Speaking event, and in the end, I take questions. And they say, somebody said to me, you keep bringing up this idea of allies, allies, allies. We need to engage more with allies. How do we do that? And I said, look around this room. How many people here are not Jewish? Zero. There were zero people. I said it has to be 50% allies and 50% Jewish people here.
Yeah, or at least start with something, right? And we've got to get out of these echo chambers where
We've got to get out of echo chambers where, I understand the intentions are really good. You know, people who will have regular rallies for the hostages, for this, for that. But you know what? That is not what is going to save us.
No, and like I said before, everything has value, and so like those rallies and vigils and these things are like critical and important, and they bring a light and a fire, but they're not moving the needle in the way, which is
not important every day.
No, but I don't want to take anything away from them. They have huge value, but I hear what you're saying, and
what I would like to see us do is look at our strengths. What are our strengths? We have phenomenally successful people in the areas of law and education. Use those skills, use that ability instead of all of those people being at a rally. Those people can help with cases, with look at all the lawfare being thrown at Jewish people right now who are drowning in it to shut them up. Mm-hmm. We need not only to be on the defense, but we also need to be on the offense.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us right now. I mean, you even said this to me earlier in the podcast, that it's hard to even imagine like what your day-to-day looks like because you're constantly putting out fires, right? And so we have that conversation at Stand With Us a lot. We talk about like we need to proactively educate and proactively be strategic in the way that we're doing, but it's hard because we are genuinely forced to be reactive so frequently. And I want to just go back to something you were saying a few seconds ago. When this all began and we started to understand the nature of our situation as a Jewish community, we said, okay, we need allies. Where are the non-Jews that are going to stand with us? Let's bring them out. Let's make sure they understand what we're going through. And I think what's changed for me the most in the last, nearly 2 years now is that I no longer just see it as an obligation to the Jewish community that we have as, leaders and to build allyship. I actually see it as a responsibility to those allies to say that, like, we see what's coming. We're here, like, understanding the nature of this beast as not just like, oh, they hate Jews, and when they're done with Jews, they'll just move on and be quiet. Like, it's, we had Jeffa on a podcast a few weeks ago. They were talking about how Christians are listed as an oppressor by the Toronto School Board as well, right? Like, this isn't just about us. It's about Western values. It's about...
Christians are being genocided right now.
In Syria. Yeah, and nobody has said a word about it, right? I've criticized and called out every single anti-Israel person that has yet to block me on social media because they're still talking about Israel and they haven't said a word about what's going on in Syria. And it's like, well, man, if you're truly about morality and not about anti-Semitism, then this should bother you too.
Canada released another statement today against Israel, and all I saw in that was, we don't care about the Druze. The Druze are, and it's funny because somebody called me out online. They said that I'm only talking about the Druze now because it's a fashionable bandwagon to talk about. And then I shared a video of when I was on the field at Majal Shams talking with the parents of the kids who were massacred a year ago now. And I've spent a lot of time with Druze people who, by the way, I am sorry, Mom, but they make the best food. Best food. There's no denying it. They make the best food. Druze people are the most peaceful, peace-loving, loyal people you will meet. Mm-hmm. And I've cared about them always. In fact, I just shared something on my ex, and by the time this comes out, it will be way down my timeline, but it's called We Are Druze. And it's a beautiful little speech by a Druze man talking about why being Druze is meaningful. Right. And I felt like everything he touched upon is everything the Jewish people, and not just Jewish people, but anyone who strives for good cares about in their life. Mm-hmm. So if you care about humanity, you would think you would care about Druze. Yeah. But the reason why we don't hear about them is because if we started opening the lens to what they're going through, you'd see what a real genocide looks like.
Right.
And they don't want the world to know that.
No, and they don't want the world to know, but they also don't want, like, it's the same idea, right? Like, everything that Hamas does is done at the expense of the people of Gaza to make them as, weak and, and hungry and dead as possible for the sake of building their propaganda campaign against Israel.
Though there are a lot of fat people who are still there.
Well, we had Natasha Hausdorff here, and I loved, she said a few times over the week, she's like, I've never seen anyone in a famine with a double chin, nor have I ever seen somebody with a starving baby with a double chin. She said, what kind of mother is feeding themselves to the extent that they have a double chin while their baby is starving and malnourished and on the verge of death, So we talk about Pallywood, right? Like all of these produced videos, the same actor you've seen die. This guy's died in like 9 different terror attacks,
Journalist.
Mr. Fafo, exactly.
Yes.
And so that's the nature of this beast, right? Is that like, we are, fighting against distorted realities, and we're dealing with, people who don't deal in truth. And again, like, I'm not that concerned about the people that are vehemently against us, but it's all these people in the middle that we need to try to find something.
It's the 80 to 90% of people who are asleep.
Totally.
And it's those people who are the ones we need to wake up. And I'm not going to tell them to choose to be on this side or that side. I'm going to show them, let people make their own choice, because it's when people make their own choice that they truly care. I will give you an example. So, my dear friend, and I keep identities private.
Unfortunately, you have to.
That's how it is.
But again, like,
it was my dad's birthday the other day. I couldn't share his picture because I'm afraid.
Right. So can I just say something without taking you off your train of thought?
Yes.
They have this idea that they have the moral high ground. Do you ever see Jews going, you don't see pro-Israel people or Jewish people going after, doxing, pro-Palestinians?
Oh, they'll say that I do, but I've only used actual information that's publicly available with OSINT. But yes, I don't dox.
Listen, you know what? You're also in a unique position, because if I had 150,000 arrows pointed at me, I might get a little bit defensive and postured as well. But all this to say that, like, we just don't fight this way. Again, like, going back to the Hulk Hogan thing, like, really shook me. I don't even like Hulk Hogan. I didn't watch wrestling. I guess I've mentioned a lot of wrestling on this podcast for a guy who.
We could talk about Captain Lou Albano.
But I guess like we're talking about wrestlings, we're talking about people that are creating fake.
Culture.
It's fake culture, right? And again, like, this is what we're dealing with here. So look, I really think it's important that we get this message out to the masses, and not because of the Jewish community needing their support. It's because they need to know what's coming.
Also,
Christmas Day was blocked. They're blocking Santa visits on Christmas. They overtook Remembrance Day parades. They shut down train stations. I mean, what has this done to our society? And we only have a few minutes left. We're getting into like the last few minutes.
Can I tell you this final story?
Oh my God, yes, yeah. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. Yes.
So the dear friend, not Jewish, October 7th, a fight, because Israel is the problem here. Because automatically, if you'll recall, Israel was immediately
before they launched a single strike,
before anything happened. And so, did I try to convince him? No, I did nothing to try to convince him. Now remember, not Jewish, right? That I didn't try to convince him. I said, okay, bye, go, see you. And then he studied and studied without me saying a word, because he wanted to learn the truth. And he's now like Douglas Murray.
Yeah, you hear these stories all the time.
And the thing is,
not enough.
Because he took his initiative, because he cared. He cared to learn the truth. And you can't tell somebody the truth if they don't care to learn it.
No.
Let people care. Make people care.
Right.
Make people understand how it will affect them.
Right.
And then they'll care.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot today, is people at the end of it have to feel like it's going to affect them somehow. But that's a really, really articulate point, is that you cannot make somebody care. Emotional appeals don't work. You're not going to convince somebody that you're in danger and you're the way. It's all about the facts, and that's why we fight with the facts. But the one thing I think that we struggle to understand sometimes is that there are some who are not willing to receive those facts at all.
That's fine.
But it's amazing to me to think about, like, I've never really met somebody who has said, oh yeah, I will study Judaism, the history of Israel. You give me resources, I will look into them. And that person has then said, oh yeah, no, I still don't see your point of view at all, right? Like, it's never happened. We deal with that a lot at Stand With Us. We have a lot of students that are reported to us, anti-Semitic incidents happen, then we work with that student through the school to give them some sort of training and workshop to sort of understand anti-Semitism better, to understand the history of Israel better.
Do you know Kassim Hafid?
Yeah, of course. Kassim is fantastic.
So Kassim was on my show, this is years ago, and he walks in and we hugged each other. And at one time, and I don't know, I'm sure not everybody knows Kassim, at one time Kassim would have wanted to kill me. Then he wanted to hug me, and it's because Kassim was training to be a terrorist.
Yep.
He was on his way to train to be a terrorist. And he just decided, he saw Alan Dershowitz's book when he was, I think, at Piccadilly Square, and he decided to buy it and read it, and it debunked everything that he was taught.
Right.
Not because somebody told him, it's because there was something within him that cared enough to be open to learn,
to explore. And that's the thing, is like, we've been taught, it's just the way our society is, we've been taught historically that, our narratives are our narratives and we need to protect them fiercely rather than be open to learning. And I'll be honest with you, like, being in a job like this, my best friend lives in Israel, and he sometimes, like, he'll call me and he'll say, like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you standing there and, like, you're constantly just, like, on the defense, explaining, talking about famine, this, that, whatever. And I said, like, we have an obligation to continue to try to, right? And so we talk about this concept all the time of like, people just need to be willing to open the door to learn. And that's where it starts. And unfortunately, we just don't get enough of that today. And people are so entrenched in their narratives. But anyhow, I'm going circular now, because I think it really impacts us a lot too.
Well, it's been one long day since October 7th, so I could understand, because everything is like Groundhog Day, everything you see. So of course you're going to go circular like that, because if you're following the chain of events, that's how you're going to continuously respond. And that's part of the problem, because we're engaged in their game. And as long as we're engaged in their game, we're giving credibility to it. Yeah, you're validating it.
You're validating it. So look, speaking of their game, we got to wrap up in a few minutes, unfortunately, because I really feel like, and I say this a lot, but I feel like we could talk for hours. I'd be curious just to hear quickly, in like just a minute or two, Twitter is or X as it's called now, is a very unique place in the sense that there is a lot more that is allowed to be said on there than is allowed to be said elsewhere. It's free flow text, and only text, like there's no pictures, no video.
No, there's pictures.
Sorry, there is, but I mean, like, it's the focal point, so people are just replying to things, and I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, that it is in many ways the most unfiltered view of humanity that we can find on social media.
I think it's the closest thing to it, but it's very far from where we need to be. I will credit Elon Musk with opening up communication. Yeah. But he has too many people working for him, and he's been infiltrated. It's really obvious.
100%. Like, so sorry, to be clear, I wasn't actually saying that in a good way. It is good, but
because I couldn't say these things on Instagram or Facebook.
Sorry, it is good for us, but it's also where I was going with it, unfortunately, is that it's bad because it isn't good or bad. I'm just saying it has positive impacts and negative impacts. And the negative side is that as a Jewish and a pro-Israel person, Stand With Us Canada, where we work, trust me, we see anti-Semitism all day, every day, nonstop, horrible stories. I have nights where I can't sleep once I start going on Twitter. Like, no, I'm serious, because like it'll be a 7 or 8 hour rabbit hole of shock that people like this exist in reality. That people who talk so openly.
I'm so desensitized.
I know. So talk to me about that as somebody who's more, because I'm not, like, Twitter is one area that like I struggle with.
I will talk to you about it if you can give me permission to share a 1 minute story before this ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like to do with this, or
no, something else. I want to come back to something.
I
want to come back to homework for everybody.
Well, don't worry. We'll end. So I actually didn't mention this to you yet. Yes. I know you like hope. You talk about hope a lot. We end
hope is my drug.
Every single podcast episode ends with a question about hope.
Okay, so that will be a second.
That will be your story.
Well, no, story, and then we go to hope.
Great. So talk to me about Twitter for just 1 second. What do you see on Twitter? Is this even a worthy conversation right now? Like, do you feel like I feel that it is a far grosser place than anywhere else?
As gross as it is, but that's the thing. It's important to go into the war zone, and I hate that I have to equate that when we have real fighters really on the front lines fighting it.
No, but this is the eighth front. This is the eighth front.
But you have to go into the dirty world, and are we talking in silos so much of the time? Yes. But there's a couple of key things here. One is what is written on Twitter is also picked up across Google, and it changes when people do searches, right? It can change meanings of words based upon how many times something is written. What you are writing about on Twitter doesn't just stay on Twitter. It infiltrates the web, the algorithms out there. AI, it changes everything. Two, there are the people who don't know what side they're on. And those are the people that I'm talking to. I'm also talking to the people who are on the side of good, so that I can either help educate them to make their arguments stronger, or I can give them that hope and that light so that they can find their strength to keep fighting too.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say this a lot. You always say people need to wake up. People are asleep.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the same thing that, like, as difficult as it might be for me to sit there and read these, like, to read like Nick Fuentes and like his cronies and what they do and the way they talk about Jews and black people and all of these other folks, we have to open our eyes to the reality of the situation around us, because it is the only way for us to truly understand how to best move forward. We did a lot of this, I think, Jews in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, for decades after the Holocaust. We said, well, maybe if we just pretend it's not happening, then it won't happen.
Yeah.
And we cannot do that. So I appreciate that answer. Now, quickly again, I don't know if this is something you can answer quickly, or if you have any thoughts on this. I wanted to talk in more detail, but the conversation sort of went a different direction. But you are unbelievable. Like, I read your tweets and I see you say,
my mom write this question.
Yeah. No, I see what you write and I'm like, wow, good for her. She has the courage to say that on Twitter, like, things that are by no means wrong or problematic in any sense. The truth.
I have the courage to say the truth.
Well, but this is the thing. Again, not that I don't or we don't, but I'm just saying, for the average person, the average person thinks to themselves, like, I saw you, anyways, we're going to get into examples. You say what you want. Cancel culture is a crazy thing that's taken place, and Jews, Israel, all this stuff, like, has gotten you immediately canceled. I guess my only question for you is, like, to the effect of, like, we talked about the fact that this is all going to affect Western civilization next. So the same thing with cancel culture, not just about Jews, but moving forward, if we continue down this path, what does it do to our society? And then just like a second follow-up, how do you find the courage and strength to just be who you are?
Well, the whole cancel culture thing, look, I've been canceled 10 times. So once you get to your 11th, cancel culture doesn't affect you anymore. You just do what you do. How do I find the courage to say what I say and talk about the things that I talk about? Look, I get death threats. I get rape threats. I have threats against my family. And it doesn't shut me up, because despite the fact that somebody will tell me, if you go out between now and midnight, you're going to get a bullet in your head, I still go out. Yeah,
you'd probably go out when you weren't even planning to go out.
I go out on purpose. I go out to spite it, because, and police will say, well, she's not afraid, so we're not going to protect her. And this is true. They say she's not afraid, then we're not going to protect her. No, I am afraid for my safety, 100%, but I am more afraid of the alternative.
Right.
And the alternative is giving in and not fighting.
Yep.
And so I will continue to do everything that I can, no matter what anybody said, because if my grandparents were able to survive the Holocaust, I am able to fight for this.
Not just able, but, you're obligated to.
Yes.
Right?
I was built for this.
Yeah, you were built for this. And I think there's a lot of
5 feet of me.
I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. Like, people that are in these spaces that have taken on finding their voice, and there are so many. I mean, like, I love our Jewish community in Canada, and to see how many people, because you were in the space, but how many people came from doing something completely random to being, Jewish voices, Jewish leaders in our community, and speaking up, standing up, putting on their businesses on hold, their businesses in jeopardy. And I admire these people so much, because, like you said, we have an obligation. If they could do it, we certainly can too. But again, like, also for the victims of October 7th in Israel, we have that obligation too. And so I really respect that, and I think it's a beautiful sentiment to end on.
Two things to end on.
But I was going to say, but before we leave, hope. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you can go wherever you want and then tell your story. But I want to just know, we've talked all about the negativity around your last, year and plus. the bad actors, but where have there been bright spots and hopes? Like, where have you found hope? Who are the people that you've discovered are like, you know, those that you can rely on for love and support? And then I would love to hear your story.
So start with the hope and the people that I can rely upon for love and support. Strangers. Do not lose faith in humanity, because it is only when you start to allow people to come in that you'll find it. Like, I was walking down the street the other day and a man comes up to me, and this happens to me, and I never know because a woman's bad at me the other week. So I never know, is this going to be good or bad? And a man comes up to me and he asks, you know, if I'm Dahlia Kurtz. And I don't know if after I say it, he's going to do something bad or something good. But I paused, I was hesitant, and continued the conversation. And then he had the nicest things in the world to say to me. And I never would have experienced that moment if I wasn't open to it. So just because there's so much bad out there, it doesn't mean that you close yourself off to living. And it doesn't mean that you close yourself off to anything, because look at what Israelis go through. They go into a bomb shelter, they go out and they go to a party. And they go to the beach and they go celebrate. Because you have to live your life. That is the absolute greatest revenge, is for you to live a happy, meaningful life. And so what keeps me going is the humanity that I know that exists, because despite the fact that I have people coming at me, I remain open to the people who want to support me, and I would never even know that they exist if I wasn't open to them. And I think people put on too many blinders to too many things.
Well, yeah, because you're afraid. It goes back to what we were saying before about being awake, is that it's important to be able to digest and understand the bad for other reasons we talked about before. But similarly, in this case, like you're talking about, when you go out in public and you see somebody looking at you, you have it's polarizing. It's not like,
I never know.
It's not like just like, oh, they might like my shirt or my hair or whatever. It's like they either hate my guts and want me to die, like actually want me to die, or they love me and they're grateful for me, and that's something that's like very scary. But also I would imagine that one positive comment of support outweighs a handful or dozens of negative ones. So I think it's a beautiful, really beautiful sentiment. And I want to just touch on one thing you said, but I don't want to dive into it just because we're really out of time. But we talked about, you were saying before, there's like the categories. There's the people who report hate crimes. There's people who don't report hate crimes. There's the crimes that are reported but not as, you know, designated as hate crimes. But what we don't talk about is the fact that being the most targeted group in the country for hate crimes also means that you're living with this edge all the time. Somebody rings your doorbell. Who's here? I'm not expecting anybody. What is it?
And
right?
It
Someone looks at you in a coffee shop.
My heart falls. My heart sinks to my
stomach.
And
that happens too. It's again for you as a public figure, but all these Jewish students on campus also. You know, you're just sitting in the library and all of a sudden someone's looking at you. 5 years ago, what that meant was, oh, maybe he or she wants me to go talk to them. Maybe they want to go for a coffee with me. Now it's like, oh God, shoot, my Magen David's out. Like maybe, oh my God, okay, I need to go to a different library.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, which one? So
it's been such a treat having you on, but I want to hear your final story for us before we let you go.
This is less of a story and more of homework.
Okay.
And I don't know.
Get ready. Do your homework.
Do your homework. Do your homework. I don't know if you'll like it.
Uh-oh.
So you might have noticed, and this is going to be weird for me to say the word right now, I don't use the word anti-Semitism. Because it may come as a huge surprise to you, but anti-Semitism is a word that was created by a Nazi forefather. And he created this word because he was looking for an alternative to the word Judenhass, Jew hatred. And so he finds anti-Semitism. Semitism doesn't even refer to people. It refers to languages. Linguists don't even use the word Semite or Semitism anymore. It's now outdated. So anti-Semitism literally means nothing. So they actually managed to whitewash. They know what Jew hate means, and they managed to whitewash it. So I will use Jew hate. I don't say that word, and the reason behind this is because language is, I have a 6-point plan. It's science-based to help mobilize allies and non-allies to fight back. and I don't mean with fists, the amount of times that this is convoluted, of course, by the other side.
Of course.
But language is one of the main points on that, and language is what controls narrative, and so I won't use the A word. I will say Jew hate if Judeophobia is worthwhile in some instances, but it's Jew hate. And part of it is when you start using the word Jew hate, you're going to see how much more powerful it is than using a word that means absolutely
Yeah.
nothing.
Well, I think that was a big part of why, like, they removed the hyphen in the first place, right? Was there was a similar sort of connotation that it changed the meaning of the word. And I think we could probably have you on a whole other podcast to talk for another hour about, the best way to communicate these things.
And 5,000 words fall out. So
No, look, all this to say that I hear and I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly, and it speaks further to the problem we talked about earlier, which is that there has to be more unity in our communications and our structure. Dahlia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much,
It's a really pleasant conversation, and really nice to be able to sit down with you. You're a true warrior. You're a Maccabee. You're honoring. I shouldn't say honoring because he's still with us, but you're celebrating your dad's life in the most beautiful way. And I really appreciate getting to talk to you. We appreciate all of you for tuning in and listening again to another episode of Breaking the Narrative. You can follow Dahlia Kurtz on Twitter, on social media. We will, we'll share all of her info with you in the description of the episode.
not my address.
Not her, no, not her address. But Dahlia, thank you all, and we'll see you again next time. Mm-hmm.